Lauron for just a moment. Right now, of course, Lauron is the art and culture editor for the Dallas Observer. Let me say that again, the Dallas Observer. We've been bringing in artists from San Diego, and we've been bringing in artists from Maine to review your work. This is our 4th exhibit of Critical Mass. It is a true honor that last summer we were able to bring Michael Granberry, who's the art promotions writer for the Dallas Morning News, and he began talking to us about the fact that Dallas does not know Shreveport, Bossier, and Northwest Louisiana. So our goal is that Lauron gets to know you and that soon you will be known in Dallas as well. And she's committed to help us with that journey. She's also written for the Dallas Morning News, the Patron Magazine, Where Traveler, Culture Map Dallas, Arts and Culture Magazine, TheaterJones.com, American Theater Magazine, and many others. So she's currently writing, but she's also written and will write a lot all through Texas. She is a visual art critic and a theater critic as well, with her master's degree from Syracuse University, her undergraduate in journalism. Syracuse in the room? Okay, there we go. Her undergraduate in journalism from SMU. And this is what we all love about Lauron, the way she loves to spend a relaxing afternoon, margaritas and homemade guacamole. Welcome, Lauron Smart.
Hi, everybody. So, excuse me, because I'm suffering from a small cold. You must curse the critics that come in here. They fall, they have a cold. I don't know what it is. But it's really been my pleasure to spend the last 24 hours looking at the art here. If you don't mind, I'm going to read, because otherwise I'll forget everything I want to say. It's been really great to think about the art in this exhibit. I'm one of the few very fortunate people in the entire country who make a living thinking and writing about art every day. And I primarily see and write about art in Dallas, so it's been fun and enlightening to get to know Shreveport and the artists that you have here, who the talent here has just exceeded my expectations, which shame on me for not having higher expectations. The truth is, as Pam says, we're neighbors. It's closer for me to get to Shreveport than it is for me to get to Austin or Houston. And closer for you guys to get to Dallas than it is to get to New Orleans. And I hope that, and I would strongly encourage all of you to come to Dallas, visit Dallas, explore the galleries, come to the museums, and see the work that is important historically and also in contemporary art in Texas. And also, we're not that far away regionally either. So, because I really do think the number one thing that any artist, organizer, or critic can do is to see and consider art. And I, coming here and not knowing about Critical Mass before I came, am just astounded by how awesome this opportunity is. My partner, Art, is a painter, and he's right there, and he came with me, and he and I were talking on the way over about how cool this is. I mean, anyone can submit, anyone can enter. You don't have to have any experience, and you have someone from the outside coming in who has no context for who the bigwigs in the Shreveport art scene are, or why you're reporting, or any of that. And you all have just equal opportunity chance to walk away with an exhibition and $2,000. So I think it's really great, and kudos to Pam and everyone on the Shreveport Regional Arts Council. Really a great opportunity. So I wanted to talk for a second about how I got to where I got, and I don't want to talk too long, but so as a writer and a critic, my way to any piece is almost always entirely empirical, which is to say that the most important thing for me will always be my visceral response and reaction. My experience of the piece can often trump theory or anything that's too academic. It's often my first instinct is what I go with, and then I'll build an argument from that. And so I always justify that with the opening to Tom Wolfe's essay on art, The Painted Word, in which he quotes Marshall McLuhan, who was the New York Times, he's a New York Times writer, and he talks about reading a newspaper as being like sinking into a warm bath, and Tom Wolfe applies this, appropriates it to his experience of painting, and how why can't a painting be just that relaxing that you just start to sink into it and enjoy it? And so that's sort of one of the ways that I walked into this gallery viewing the art here. So I see just an irresistible painterliness in the colorful piece by Susan Duke on this wall, for example, and then the quiet mystery in the shadows of Talbot Hopkins' piece right above that. And I like that you can just sink into it and you let your mind live in the painting for just a little while, and that's sort of a wonderful way to view art. And then there's also the narrative quality to art. Many critics will tell you that a piece needs a full story, and I think that's true. In abstraction, this can mean that the story is completed by a viewer, by your associations that you have and that you apply to a piece. In this gallery space, I see so many stories, such an array of stories, each singular and interesting across the board. I was drawn to LaTanya R. Jackson's piece in the back with this quiet, faithful story of a young boy, and if you read the title, it's about how he needs shoes, and then you have the bird, and it's about taking off into flight, like you hope for any young boy. And then there's also this rip-roaring science fiction fantasy on the wall in the back room. One was a painting by Yasuko Makishi, and it's just really exciting to look at that piece. And then there's the video art in the back room where you'll see an adorable 40-second video by Brandon Christ called XY, in which an animated figure steps out of a mirror and he flashes between a male and a female, and he's hugging himself and dancing, and it's just so charming and wonderful. And then there's another way that you can experience art, and it's sort of to consider a piece's argument and where it fits into contemporary art. And though I've never been an artist myself, unless you count the drawing classes I took as a kid, and you shouldn't, my background academically is primarily writing. And so one of the most important tenets in writing is, especially in writing criticism, is the need for an argument and the ability to defend whatever you're trying to say. And the reality of writing criticism is that what I'm meant to make a persuasive argument about a piece or an exhibition. So what about the exhibition spoke to me? What does it say about the context of contemporary art? Regionally, what does the art here say about Shreveport? What does it say about the country that we live in? What does it say about everyone in this room? And so for me right now, my interest and what I'm seeing internationally is to challenge the commonly accepted uses of artistic materials. So I recently went to the Forever Now exhibition at the MoMA in New York, which is a contemporary painting show, and what the curator hoped to bring to the forefront was this thing that she called atemporality, which is to say that in the age of information and the internet age, we sort of have collapsed movements in art. So art history is taught from one movement to another, from realism to impressionism, etc., etc. In contemporary art, all of you artists in this room are painting in a world in which you have everything at your fingertips. So you can see artists across the country challenging composition and construction methods. So at that exhibition, you had an artist named Oscar Murillo piling his canvases onto the floor and allowing the visitors to move them around, making the process of just engaging with the work performative as a viewer. And then you had a woman adding neons to her landscapes, and then you had another painter who painted gesturally, like an abstract expressionism, and then she would add newspaper clippings to her work. So I'll get to the point of why you're all here. The work, for me, in this show exhibits incredible skill, thoughtful approaches, and a strong understanding, and in some cases, extreme mastery of the medium the artists are working in. But almost across the board, there seems a lack of contemporary fixations, barring social political pieces like Kurt Harville's Coming Soon with a Fish, which, I mean, it has this very visceral idea of I know exactly what you're saying, and I love that. And then you have Taffy Garci's piece about healthcare, which is just beautifully crafted and says so much about, I mean, you know what she's saying with that piece. But what I see that is contemporary fixations in this room are not necessarily fixations about the art making itself, but about everyday human issues, which is definitely something to applaud. And from the pieces, I feel a sense of urgency and a subject matter that the artists all care about, even if some of them might seem obvious in execution. But with these things in mind, and I was interested in finding a piece of art that is absorbing a bit of narrative and much of the art world's current preoccupations with materials, I was struck by a number of pieces in the gallery almost right away. And the first piece, because I did the room like I'm sure most of you did tonight, I did the full loop like this. So the first piece that I was just completely drawn to was John C. Wagner's paint cut. And I've seen, that like the layers, that most of the artists I see using layers and the carving like that, they use paper and they carve paper, but what he was doing is carving layers of paint. And this idea of layering paint and then carving into it seems very preoccupied with the joys of discovery in the process of painting itself, but also in this gritty underbelly of challenging yourself as an artist. Many artists seem to sculpt out of the top layer of the paint they add onto a canvas, but Wagner is more internal in this piece. He's not building, but he's taking away from the paint. And then the next piece that caught my eye that I've spent a lot of time thinking about is, you're not going to be able to go to it because it's in the back room, but it's Thomas M. Little's Gold Rush in the back with the scissors. I've been talking about it as the scissor piece. And it seems to be making a commentary on the paint by numbers maturation of MFA artists, which is to say that certain kind of artists get good at making art to sell it commercially, and it seems to be making fun of that. It also tempts the viewer to participate, to cut up a piece and maybe even keep it for themselves, stick it in their pocket, which I've thought about doing. Don't tell him, wherever he is. And so it fits into this historical context for artists who make work only to destroy it. Then of course there are historical references to Yoko Ono cutting up her clothes to reveal intimacy. And in Little's piece, I can almost imagine that eventually, if people are brave enough to cut into it, the art will eventually peek through to the wall behind it. But the piece that I ultimately picked, and I hope that she's here.
Take a breath. Take a breath. This is it.
My choice at the end of the day, and art is completely subjective, and I've loved spending so much time with all of the work in this space. But it was the first thing that caught my eye, and it hasn't really left my brain in 24 hours. Is Marilyn Couch's Summer Harvest Festival, which is Marilyn here?
Where's Marilyn?
Marilyn Couch, is she here?
Oh, she's not here?
Of course I would do that. You're all gonna leave now because I didn't pick anyone who's here. So I picked this one, and it goes back to my interest in using materials in new, different ways. Because of the decorative playfulness in the subject matter, the piece to me was at once childlike but fully sophisticated. You see small stick figures that are basic in representation at the bottom, but fascinating if you think about them as symbols for humanity. And there's so much clean, beautiful, crisp composition on these walls. Plenty of work that is well created. But Couch's work to me and her interest, as evidenced in this piece, in branching out into new material and playing with how to turn the used dish towel into something beautiful. And that's sort of the wonderful thing about art, after all. One's ability to create something out of nothing. But the truth is, art isn't creating something out of nothing. It requires tools, it requires skill, it requires thought. And all of that is on display in this piece. I eventually chose this one because what I see in it is a way of looking at everything as a potential piece of art and an artist's intent in bringing life into work and the everyday into their own work and blurring the lines of where the piece starts and where it ends. And ultimately, it was a textured, lovely piece that I couldn't get out of my head. So that's why I picked what I did.
with joy, we are way ahead of schedule. So several of you have told me you're trying to get to the Centenary Shakespeare Theater. You're going to make it. Don't worry about it. Again, Lauron is going to start here and walk the room, and he'll say, stop, let's talk about my piece a little bit more. But now the literary winner, and Tom Ward is our critic selected by Bob Pincus. Let's see if we can all take a deep breath, and we're going to move on. Talk for about 30 seconds. Talk, stretch, do what you need to do, then we're going to talk about Tom.